How are my blood glucose levels affected by a high fat meal and a high carbohydrate meal? Well, this graph here shows 16th of August 2025, and this is my blood glucose for a 24-hour period on the lifestyle that I recommend for losing weight and regaining your health. The positive consequence being, if you're pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, you can reverse your chronic disease without needing to use drugs, but changing your diet or your lifestyle to a high carbohydrate or high sugar freedom lifestyle, which is low in fat and low in protein, and subsequently is vegan. And I'm using one of these. So this is a continuous glucose monitor, and this is amazing because I'm also learning a lot, and to be honest, it's telling me that what I share and what I recommend is correct, i.e., a high sugar diet does not lead to, or a high sugar lifestyle or high carbohydrate diet does not cause diabetes. And this is essentially a graph that shows my fasting blood glucose levels, and you can see that's a good healthy normal range. So fasting here where I'm not eating, so this is basically my sleep, and then you can see that was my breakfast, and then this is the rest of the day when I was up and about moving and eating, and I was cycling and I was up and about, and this was my waking period. So I'm currently doing a series, well, at the time of recording this video, and I'll put a link showing what foods I eat every day, showing my blood glucose levels, and I'm sharing what foods you can eat, and also subsequently reverse type 2 diabetes. So I also have another graph here, which is for the 17th of August 2025. So this is the next day after this. So in the evening of the 16th of August, I ate some fatty foods. So I'm going to show you the fatty foods that I ate, and I'm going to show you the foods that I would normally recommend. But this is interesting because you'll be able to see how it's affected my blood glucose levels. Okay. So this is the next day, and you can already see here in the morning, my blood glucose levels are remaining higher on the high fat that I'd had the night before, and it takes a lot longer for my blood glucose levels to come down. See the difference? So my body is regulating my blood glucose levels a lot better. They're in a much healthier range on the high carbohydrate, low fat, low protein foods versus eating lots of fatty foods into the night, in the evening, and then into the morning. You can see how longer it takes for my blood glucose levels to come back down into essentially just a few hours before I have my breakfast. You can already see, and that's just one evening changing what I normally eat, which is a high carbohydrate diet. And essentially, I would usually recommend no more than 20 grams a day to be healthy. I usually aim for about 10 grams a day, eating as much of the foods as I recommend, which is, well, I'll show you that in a moment. But first, I'll show you the fatty foods that I ate, some of them. So I had some vegan fatty cookies, and you can see all of this on what I ate that day. So just check out that series, and you'll see what I ate exactly. Had some chocolate cake, and I had fatty foods like crisps as well. And I think in total I had about 80 grams, or maybe a little bit more, 80 grams of fat that day, which, as I say, if you're aiming for around 10 grams or 10 to 20, you can already see how much more that is. So as a result of eating those foods, and I also ate vegan burgers and vegan sausages. So as you can see, here's the graph again. And then I'll show you the graph for 2 days after this. So this is the 19th of August. So I didn't eat, well, let me think. So I had some fatty food, and I think I had a little bit of fatty food the day after, but not as much. So this is the 17th, and on the 18th I had a little bit of fatty food. And the reason for that is because I've got a video talking about that as well. I was injured off the bike, so I like cycling, and I'm going to do a series of Train Like a Pro. So that'll be another series you can check out where I show training to get fit, and my goals are to do hill climbs here in the UK. So hill climb races, so that'll be exciting. And essentially, I don't recommend already coming into doing a large training block already lean. I think it is healthy to add a few kilos, 1.5, 2 kilos or so. That's what I've done in the few weeks before. So essentially, I'm going to do a month training like a pro, aiming for professional amount of hours. So essentially, that will be, a 90, maybe a 90 or 100 hour month of doing cycling training. So that's like 5, 6, 700 miles a week. Hopefully, if everything goes right. And on the foods that I recommend, you get very lean. So this was the day after. Again, I've shown already how fatty it was. And then 2 days after that, hopefully you can see here, I'm back to eating my normal foods. So you can see how my blood glucose levels are back to being, fasted blood glucose levels are back to being healthy there. So I'll take away so 16, 17, and then 19. So that's took a 24 to 48 hours to get that fat out my system. And I'll compare the 17th and the 19th. You can see how the 16th and the 19th are similar because the evening before, essentially, I didn't have the high fat food, and it's better blood regulation. Some blood glucose levels is being better regulated there, whereas you can see how it was affected on just one evening. So this is just from one evening of a high fat meal, just one evening. And you can already see it's 1, 2, 3 millimoles higher coming into the evening, if not 3.5, 4 millimoles. So it's almost twice the amount of blood glucose levels coming into the same period in the morning. So foods that I recommend in order to reverse diabetes, as you can already see, the trend of my blood glucose levels is going up towards being more towards being diabetic already. So isn't that amazing? How great that is for you to be able to see the difference. So this is a high fat meal on my blood glucose levels, and this is a low fat. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? How amazing is this piece of technology that I can show? This was in real time, and I was seeing this in real time. My fasting blood glucose levels were higher because of the fat that I'd eaten and consumed and was in my system. So I recommend foods usually like white rice. So white rice is great. Just put that there. Also, I recommend fruit. So this is a nice ripe pineapple. And I also recommend fruit juice. So fruit juices like this, for example. And I recommend consuming as much of these foods, so white rice, fruit, and fruit juice, as much of them as you want. That's right, no calorie counting, eating to feel full. So for example, I would recommend if you're going to have a rice dish for tea, for your dinner, then you have your bowl mostly filled with white rice, And then you might add some, for example, some chopped up red pepper. And if you don't have, I would recommend you can make your own spicy herb and spicy chili tomato sauce. And that way you can control oil. So there's no oil. So I don't recommend oil. Yeah, you can add a little bit of salt for taste, a little bit of sugar for taste. And I say a little bit of salt because the more salt you're adding, the more essentially water weight, for example, you're going to add. So the more sort of puffier you're going to look. So if you want to lose weight, keep the salt intake generally to a few grams a day. So not 6, 10, 12, 14, 20 grams of salt. That's not good. And yeah, a little bit of sugar for taste. Again, if you want to make up, I recommend using sugar water for exercise. So I recommend 100 grams an hour. So if you're going out and maybe doing an hour of exercise, I call it moving your fun. I call it having fun while moving your body. And yeah, at least 100 grams an hour. And that could be sugar water, or maybe, you could have vegan gummy sweets. They're good because, if you're going for gummy sweets, then there's basically no fat in them, which is good. And usually there's basically no salt in them either. And the foods that you're eating, if you're eating as much of them as you want, these are what I would call the healthy way to get your electrolytes. So if you're eating unlimited amounts of these foods, so when I say unlimited, you just eat to feel full. You're getting all the electrolytes you need, so you don't need to buy electrolyte powder to put in and whatnot to put in your tablets or powder to put in your bottle. So there's so many benefits to the way I recommend. So I hope you enjoy the video and like and subscribe. Fruit, it can be expensive, so that's why I recommend white rice. So if you want to do the vegan, high sugar, low fat, low protein lifestyle, you can do the rice based version, which is the cheapest way to go. Some rice, some soy sauce, maybe some vegetables like sweet corn, some maybe a little bit of beans. So you can make your homemade sauce, or you could buy some barbecue sauce. Just remember, low fat, low salt generally. Definitely no oil. And just watch out for the salt. But if you have the money to spend, then you could do breakfast and lunch, all fruits. So you could do ripe mangoes and ripe pineapples, ripe watermelons, and then I always recommend some rice. So ideally, you could say fruit for breakfast and lunch, and as much of it as you want, and then rice in the evening for that energy and starch that you need. So I wouldn't recommend just eating fruit because I don't think you get enough sugar, and sugar is what powers every cell in the human body. So if you're feeling tired and lethargic and you need caffeine and drugs to get you through your day, then clearly you need more sugar, okay? And if you're having a high carbohydrate, low fat version of that, so rice, you're getting all of the sugars you need without all the excess fat. So what's important to know is the excess fat is causing insulin resistance, lowering your insulin sensitivity. As you can see, just in those few hours, my insulin sensitivity went down because my blood glucose levels remaining higher. So my blood glucose fasting levels were already increasing. So that's what you need to focus on, is lowering your fasting blood glucose levels into the range that you can see here. And you don't need to worry about this section here where I'm awake and there's like this increase here, because my blood glucose levels in this breakfast period here, where it looks like it's a spike, that's good because it shows that my blood glucose levels go up and come back down. Okay, they don't remain elevated. So you want to make sure everything remains low when you fasted. So around 4 millimoles there for me generally. And if you're up here 12, 15, this is where you're becoming pre-diabetic and diabetic, where you're elevated up out of here. This is not someone who is pre-diabetic or diabetic, okay? This is essentially, if you show this to your healthcare provider, they would say, good, yeah, we want your blood glucose levels to be like that. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe and share this video. You know, if someone's confused about what they should do, well, here's the proof. If just in a few hours, I was able to, and I didn't want to necessarily, I was able to induce a more unhealthy blood glucose level. Look at that. So yeah, thank you for your time, and check out other videos on the channel. You'll be able to see I'm always lean. Check out the series where you can see what foods I recommend. And if you want personalized coaching to become healthier, so what foods you should eat and whatnot, and how you should structure your day, what you should have, and also cycling. So cycling is the best form of moving your body in order to lose weight and have fun. So the foods that I recommend are fun to eat. They're enjoyable, tasty, satiating, and also cycling is fun and it gives you freedom. So that's why the foods that I recommend give you freedom from the healthcare system. Freedom from the healthcare system. No more doctors in your life. And cycling gives you freedom in life. So this is the high sugar freedom lifestyle. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Ciao.